Hi ladies, and welcome to your ocean pollution homework. These are the questions that you're going to be answering today through your homework. What do people use for living and non-living resources from the ocean? What are some sources of pollution in the ocean? How are the organisms affected by the pollution? And what are some ways we are trying to curb this pollution or keep it from happening? So the first question is, how do people use living and non-living resources from the ocean? But first I have a question for you. Why is it important to take care of the ocean? So this is the overlaying theme. Do you know how many things we as humans use from the ocean? We rely on it so much more than we think we do, that we realize we do, both in living and non-living resources. Let's talk about the living resources. If you look at the chart, what is the living resource that we use abundantly? You got it. Fish and fisheries, right? So organisms that we eat. Okay? So harvesting fish is one resource that we use a lot. So we use it for fish that are eaten, like anchovies, mackerel, tuna, and so for other sources as well, clams, lobster, seaweed, okay? Many things like that. Another thing that we do in the oceans is something called aquaculture. So, which is the farming of, in this case, saltwater, but it can be saltwater or freshwater organisms. Oysters are an example of that. We also harvest salmon. So basically, we put them in the salt water and keep them in an area where we're able to make sure the temperature and the food they get is at the optimum quality. So therefore, we get organisms that are well taken care of, big organisms that we can then use. So what do these have in common? Have you guessed it yet? They look kind of unrelated, however, they have one ingredient in common. The answer is algae from the ocean. They take and use this algae from the ocean in many different ways for many different ingredients, including these things like cosmetics, ice cream. So that is a huge resource that we use. Okay, let's talk about non-living resources. As you can see from the graph, we use things like oils and gases that are in the bottom of the ocean. We use the water from the ocean. We can take the salt out of it and then use it as drinking water. We can also use those salts as well that we have taken out of the water. And also we can use them for minerals. We can find these nodules at the bottom of the ocean that have important minerals in them. The ocean has kind of a cool feature that it's kind of a self-cleaning system. It has a self-cleaning system, but this system can only help clean itself to a certain degree. The problem with that is that although some pollution occurs naturally, most pollution is related to humans. And we produce so much pollution that the ocean cannot take care of all of it. I know, this is kind of what you're thinking, right? Like, oh boy, that's not good. Well, let's take a look at some of the sources of pollution and then how animals are affected by it. And I bet you'll look like that little boy at the end. So take a look at this graph. What is the largest source of pollution? Was it what you expected? If you notice here, easily, street runoff is the greatest source of ocean pollution. So next time you decide to throw your wrapper out onto the street out of your car, for instance, you might want to double check and think about that a little bit more. How many of these sources of pollution are through natural causes? Not very many, huh? Just this one right here, natural seeps. So like if there's oil in the ground and it seeps up through, that would be an example of a natural seep. But almost all these other ones are even more polluting than natural seeps, and there are so many more. So we do things like have sewerage, chemicals, and trash. We dump them into our ocean waters or onto our streets, which water takes them away, and eventually they end up into the oceans. Drilling for oil and gases can also cause spills, which can pollute the ocean and affect the animals. How would you like to live in an environment like this? I know it looks kind of funny, right? But I know I wouldn't want to be living in something that looks like this. Yet we're asking we're asking for some of our ocean animals to live like this. What are some things that happen? Well, take a look at this duck. Oil spill. Okay. These are pretty eye-opening, aren't they? So obviously with this poor duck, he's not going to be able to survive this just because somebody had some soda and threw the trash in the wrong place. And with this duck, you think, oh, well, eventually some of that oil will come off. Even if that is the case, ducks have this certain type of chemical oil in them which keeps them afloat. And the longer this oil stays on the duck, the more that will be eaten away, and then they won't be able to float in the water. So what are some ways we are trying to curb this pollution and keep it from happening? Well, the question then becomes, who owns the ocean? Who has the responsibility of protecting it? And this has been a struggle for many of years. And over that, we've come up with different types of things such as government regulations. Also, the United Nations started a treaty that many countries have signed saying that they would control the first 22 kilometers of the ocean, so being able to regulate the harvesting of the animals in it, but also being able to help protect it and keeping it clean. There are a bunch of organizations out there whose job is just to help protect these animals, to create refuges where no people can go so they can live in an environment that will not be affected by these humans. But the most important of these things, I believe, is this awareness. It begins with you. Okay? What are you doing that might cause pollution to the ocean that you're not even aware of? What things have you done that you can change? How can you help get this message out? We'll talk a little bit more about that, and you'll have some more chances to do that in class. Until tomorrow, I'll see you later.